you're going there for the monsters. You're probably not going for the players. But in the interim, you're going to find players there, right? And players are going to be able to fight each other even in the far future whenever there's monsters. So what we want is it to be absolutely chaos. And when you go there, you're going there with the expectation of getting your ass handed to you. And that's fine.
Hello, people. We are here today with Jason Hughes, the creator of Mooncast. Is that right?
I am one of 4, 5, 6 creators of Mooncast. We have a team. It's not just me.
Graciously accepted my request to come on the show and tell us all about it, because I'm very interested in Mooncast. Before we start, though, I want to share my screen here and talk about how Mooncast kind of started. Just really quick. Do people remember this? Bodhi? Bodhi came about to help fund this game called Mooncast. This guy right here is the guy who this Bodhi coin was created for, to create this game, and he's put together a big team. And so now you can illuminate people as to what Mooncast is.
Sure. Yeah, Mooncast is it's a survival crafting MMO that has blockchain hooks that allows you to find everything in the game and then export it to the blockchain and then bring it back in if you want to. So you have control, you have ownership, but it's not a NFT pre-sale situation. And that was one of the distinctive factors, I think, in the way that we were deciding to make Mooncast work, is differently than a lot of other Web3 games, and just approach building a blockchain game that feels more like a traditional game. And I think that's something that was maybe lost in the past, that I think we could just return to, because that's the dream, I think.
Well, has this been done before?
I'm going to say I haven't seen a game that's doing it exactly the way we're doing it. The closest one is one that's now coming out. People have been playing it for the last month or so, called Off the Grid. And it's a beautiful first-person shooter, AAA, like ridiculously gorgeous game. And it's had many years to work on it. And the thing is, they're doing something very similar, which I feel a little vindicated that someone else is doing it first. And it's also good to see how they handle it. So honestly, I think that's great. I don't necessarily want to be the only guy off in the weeds doing something different. So I'm glad to see, how do they do well, and if they screw things up, I want to learn from that. So,
okay.
I heard that game is doing pretty good, actually. Off the Grid, yeah, they're doing amazing. So.
Yeah, it's a pretty game, and I think that it's built by game devs, not just blockchain people. A lot of older games were made by just people who know Web3 and don't know games.
So Mooncast, though, it's a certain kind of game. It's not really a first-person shooter, right?
No, it's a very different kind of game. We're taking a lot of design ideas from Valheim, all of them, but some. We're actually pulling some design ideas from Minecraft. Specifically, there's a thing called Tinker's Construct mod that isn't part of the vanilla Minecraft, but it is a really deep crafting system that gives you a lot of flexibility that a lot of games don't have. We're taking that and ratcheting it up a notch. It's different. It's deep. It's very fascinating to see the kind of design decisions that we can make and roll out a whole bunch of content really quickly for players. In Mooncast, we plan to have a lot more to do a lot faster than most games, specifically in reaction to how long it takes to make an MMO normally. Normally, an MMO is a huge content grind. It takes a tremendous amount of effort and a lot of money to make. The developers get exhausted. You have to have this massive team. You look at the size of World of Warcraft was 60-something people on ship date. Now they're 1,000 people. A bunch of them are customer support, but there's hundreds and hundreds of developers. There's no way we can do that. So I want to build something that is as fun as a game like that, like some blend of Diablo and Valheim and then a little bit of World of Warcraft, but do it with a really small team where we can feel really connected to it. And we can listen to you guys and take input and adapt and adjust, because It's for you guys. Like this is the Bodhi dream, right? There were a lot of people who were saying, we want a game, we didn't get the game that we wanted, so we're going to give you the money to make the game, and that's why we're here. So we're doing everything we can to get as much as possible in the shortest period of time, and that actually includes making some design concessions or decisions that help us move faster. And I actually think it's going to end up for the better.
So while we're talking, before we start going into questions, I'd like to start showing some clips of the games, because you gave me a ton of clips that I want to at least show while we're talking. These clips actually have a lot of talking on them too. We're going to have those on the FazRadio Discord for people to listen to later. But I want to get these going, and then people can start asking questions.
Well, I think I'm going to start with asking, how's the name of Mooncast came out? Like, why the name Mooncast?
Well, originally the Discord channel wasn't made by me. It was made by another guy, and I can't say it out loud, but it was MAGA was the initials of it, and at some point it became clear that wasn't an appropriate name, so it became Outcasts. Right, they're outcasts, and everybody there was feeling a little bit like shit on. So I didn't want to name the game Outcast. Well, for one, there's a ton of games out there already named Outcast, but there's also like that has a pretty negative connotation. I'm like, I don't want to feel down. I want to feel up. And if there's anything that crypto is good at, it's looking up, right? So let's moon. And then Mooncast was also kind of the play on words, because the first thing we're going to try and do is build a fishing game in the game, because a fishing game, you can't have an MMO without a fishing game. You just can't. Sorry. If you have an MMO without a fishing game, you actually failed. So yeah, we're going to just build that first, because there's a lot of good gameplay that comes with being able to go fishing. And you can see here, there's some water and characters running around. The whole idea is we don't have the amount of people and time to build a full MMO yet. But what we can do is start building some elements of a fishing game that lets us kind of build toward all those features. But interestingly enough, this is clearly like the whole mini game is not here at all. But the reason we want to do the fishing game is that allows us to build a lot of the core tech, like inventory systems and the ability to equip something and the ability to fight a fish, right? And get that fish into your inventory. So that's basically like looting a monster after you kill it. So there's a lot of analogs and a lot of the same code that's going to be used in fishing as there would be elsewhere. So anyway, Mooncast is casting them.
This is not what it's going to look like in the game, right?
No, not at all. Not at all. But some of the elements here are what we're going to eventually see whenever it's pretty. Like this is programmer art. This is how you move fast and break things. We built a thing that allows us to have inventory, and it has everything is built the way that we want it. It's just ugly as sin, right? So we don't care what it looks like. We care about getting the functionality in there. And then when we have the opportunity to bring on a really great UI UX guy, they'll come in or girl come in and just wreck through all of our bad looking UI and make it pretty.
You have all sorts of things in this game. I see a town right here. Will there be NFTs in this game that you can buy, and like a town NFT, and earn money with it?
So there are things. Our design for NFTs is fairly different than most games. I don't want to sell you a town. I don't want to sell you a building. What I do want to sell is more gameplay than what you normally would get. So you can come in and play. We're still figuring out all the details. Obviously, we're super early, but there are things that we sell, and it's strictly revenue to the game that no one else can sell. And that's traditionally like cosmetic characters or different skins or whatever. So we're going to have some of that, but we will allow people to buy a land claim token. And a land claim token is very different than a lot of other NFTs. We want to make it more like a simulation, where as you're running around, you find a place that you think this would be a great spot for a building. You can claim a 1 by 1 meter square of space. And then you can go to the next one and claim it too, and then claim the next one. And then you can use those tokens to claim each space 1 by 1. And when you have enough of them in the right organization, like a 3 by 3 is the smallest thing you'll be able to build, you can put down a tent, and that tent is really basic, or a shack. So when you've acquired that land, you still have to bring resources there and build the minimum, and then you can add more resources, and then that grows up to the next piece, and then so on and so forth. It's not as flexible as like a game like Valheim, where they let you place every little wall and door and everything like that. That's not what we're trying to do. But we do want to build the game in such a way that there are certain things that we let you buy from us, and then you go out and flexibly put where you want. And there's a bunch of other stuff that is between you and the players. And it's a very clean separation between what's ours and what's yours.
I think we might have missed part of it. I was wondering, is there a way that you can earn money with these NFTs, or you just buy things for the game?
When you're using something in the game, it's not an NFT. It's actually just in the game. So if you buy something in the game, it's just in the database, it's in the game. You can take anything and export it and turn it into an NFT. And that includes, like, the way that we've structured this. If you have a sword that you've crafted with very specific materials, that is a ERC 721 that remembers exactly what you did to make it into that kind of sword. When you export it, it's no longer in your inventory in the game. It's now just on the blockchain. You can go do whatever you want with it there. Whoever it is who buys it or picks it up or trades it with you or whatever, they can bring it in, or you can bring it back in, whatever. You can put it into your inventory and now continue using it. So it's a very different way than most games. They put things in your NFTs sit in your wallet, and the game sees it. We're actually using it.
That leads me to a question about how the economy works. Have you put a lot of thought into this economy? Do you have like an economist helping you?
The way that it works, we don't have an economist. Man, what I'd love to have one. But we do have two Austrian-feeling economists, which is myself and Eric Tuvey. And so in a lot of ways, we look back at a day when everybody's currency was backed by something of value. And there's some people who think that was terrible. Some people think that's good. It doesn't really matter. In a small scale environment, it's actually okay. In countries and world size, I don't know. That's for real economists. But what we're going to do is every resource that exists in the game is actually what I would call gold backed, where a token has been minted that represents that resource. So a common might be 5 tokens. A rare might be 50 tokens. A legendary might be 5,000 tokens. And that exists in a wallet somewhere. And you can get those coins for that resource. So there is actually a correspondence between tokens and things. And that means that we can't just arbitrarily just mint a crap load of whatever it is that we want to mint, because we have to actually have tokens for that. And you can get those tokens. So if there was, and we have to also be principled about how many we mint and how that's related to player activity. So that's part of the contract, not a physical blockchain contract, but it's part of the contract we make with ourselves and with the game and with the community, is that we have a correspondence between player activity and things that we put in the world. And that means that common means the same thing now as it does 5 years from now or 15 years from now, if the game lasts that long. So coins mean a unit of gameplay. And that's a promise, right? We have to have that promise so that people know that something that has value today still has value in the future. And I've never heard of anybody trying to do that. It's pretty crazy.
No, I think the feature that you just said about the actually taking one item from the game, put it on the blockchain, and someone else can use it, that's a really cool feature, to be honest to you. To be able from one player to another to use your stuff or somebody else's stuff, that's really cool thing there. That's special to me.
Yeah. Well, and I think a lot of games are afraid to do that because NFTs have been so expensive and they were purchased before the game existed, that the idea of the game taking the NFT out of your wallet and putting it into the game, what happens if there's a bug? Well, everybody freaks out, right? That's still a problem for us. We're going to have to make sure that there aren't bugs like that. But I think it's important to know that your ownership is in the game and it's also on the blockchain, and they're convertible. I think that's important.
How about the characters? Are the characters going to be customizable, or are you just going to go through like a menu and pick one that you like and use it like that?
What you see right here is a version of a human male, and every other character that you can be, that you could, as a cosmetic, basically, you can have any number of different heads, and when you equip the head, it changes your whole body. It's basically, it picks your flesh tone, it gives you your head, but it also identifies whether you're allowed to wear a helmet or not. Like, you could have a unicorn head and it wouldn't make sense to put a helmet on it, right? But interestingly, we have a really deep equipment system too, where for example, the helmet, you might actually have a samurai helmet, and a samurai helmet, sometimes you see them with a mask. The helmet has the slot for the mask. Not all helmets would have a mask, right? You wouldn't see that on like a French standard like knight's helmet. You wouldn't see that. So certain gear comes with their own equipment slots. Anyway, so when you ask about like customizing characters, everything that you see on the character when we're actually a little further along will be things that you've crafted or somebody has crafted. And the materials that you see on them are the actual resources you found in the game to craft them. So if you make something out of, you may need to get a different colored dye or something from different vegetables or different flowers or whatever, but you can dye whatever you want. And the color that it comes out as is going to be different. And the material properties are coming from the resource that you mined. So if you wanted to, you could make leather, or you could make something that's cloth, or you can make something that's metal or something like that, and it'll look like that. So every character is probably going to look very different from each other.
So wait a minute. So you're telling me that if I'm out exploring and I dig up some wild, crazy ruby, I can take the metal I have in that ruby and have someone or myself or whoever craft a special mask just for me using those things.
Exactly.
Whoa.
Exactly. Everything you find in the game has value. Cool. Yeah, everything has value. The rarity is something that it's fixed at the level of what rarity it is. So like a common thing will show up at the same frequency no matter what kind of common it is. And it has the same number of tokens of value. So things that are rare are actually literally rare. And you won't just be able to go out and mine those things over and over again because they're rare. They're not going to spawn all the time. But the reasons that they're rare is that they have material properties that flow through to the item itself. For example, if you have a fire ruby or something like that, that means that you now do passive fire damage if you craft it into a weapon. We're building these systems from an engineering perspective, not from a content perspective. Like, we want to make everything fit.
Are you able to repurpose then also? Say you're sick and tired of the helmet with the fire ruby, and you go, I think I want to make this a sword now. Can you take that and recraft it, or do you have to find new things for it?
I don't know yet. Honestly, I think that what we could do easily is you can take the item and take it to the recycler. Well, there's a building. There's only a few buildings that we as developers operate. One is a land claim. The other is the recycler. The recycler allows you to take any resource, like raw resource, like just find the ruby. You go over to the recycler and you put it in the recycler and it gives you coins. That's how you get your coins out. Everything that you craft with resources remembers what the original resources were. So you can take that item and go put it in the recycler and you can get those coins out. So nothing ever loses value. But when you think about an item that has had to be crafted, somebody had to find all those pieces. Somebody had to get good enough to craft this item. And so there's a lot of hidden value in middlemen getting good at things. And so if you're taking an item and you go to the recycler and you throw it through there, you're losing a lot of that value. So you really want to take that item and sell it to somebody else who wants it, because there's all this extra effort and time and mastery that had to go into building that item. It would be a waste to just throw it into there for the raw value. Now, we could break those things back down into their composite resources, and I think that we wouldn't lose anything if we did that, but it would change the economy a little bit. the question is, how many times are people just not going to find the users that want those items versus how easy it is to go and throw it through the recycler? I think that's when you use the blockchain. You can export that item, put it up on OpenSea or somewhere else, and then somebody will come along and take it. That's up to you guys. Like, that's not for me to decide. If it sucks and no one's ever buying these items, then yeah, let's break it apart. Sure.
These items gonna be available in the same marketplace in the game or not?
Anything that's on OpenSea is outside of the game. So
yes,
if you've exported an item out of your inventory, now it's out and the game doesn't know about it anymore.
Economies can get hacked too, and I could totally see in the future you get the game going, people start using it, and then they find a recycler hack. You get some flowers, you get a little potion bottle, you put them together, and then you throw it through the recycler. It's going to do this. And then if you sell it, you export it and import it, and then you got $1,000. And then somebody is going to be finding that. You're going to be like, why is everybody getting the damn flowers all the time?
Well, I actually wrote that code this week. The way that whenever a thing is spawned, we actually have tokens sitting in a real wallet already. And so we have an accounting of that. And if it's inexpensive enough, we'll just count it up and then move it to the active wallet. So there's a inactive wallet that has the tokens waiting for an item to be spawned. And then we'll move it over to the active wallet. And then that item is in the world. So we do have a balance there. The bug that I'm worried about, that I think any developer is worried about, is that maybe there's a way that you could actually sell the same thing multiple times to the recycler, or somehow you could claim more than you should, or something like that. That's important.
Or the functionality. Once you put it in your wallet, will you have functionality for that day, or while it's in your wallet? Because if you have it for that day, you can quickly sell it to yourself in another wallet, get functionality out of that, and have multiple players. And that's a hack I've seen before.
Yeah, for sure. Well, the one thing that I do like about what we're doing is that when you put something on the blockchain, it's actually bundling all the properties and it goes with it. So we're not storing things in the database that have to line up with the item. It is in the database, and when you export it, the whole thing is out. Durability on a sword, for example. If you have a brand new sword, you go beat up a bunch of goblins, and then you decide you're going to sell the sword and then bring it into a different wallet, and then you have new fresh sword. Well, that doesn't work because we already exported the durability with it too. So we're trying to make it so that this is pretty airtight.
The level of depth that you have put into this, thinking this through and finding what it is that you want to be able to present to people, is something that's, I think, pretty unique as well, because a lot of times people, they just want things that go boom and lots of blood. And there's not a lot of depth that goes into that. How is it that you guys come up with this intricate level of depth?
Basically, you have these games that are a combination of software systems that all intersect perpendicular. So each one has its own way of functioning that is important for the other ones to function, but they're different, right? So, for example, I worked with him. I was employee number one working with him on System Shock 3. So I was his lead engineer, and it was me and actually Arturo, who was working with us on Mooncast for a little while, and Lauren were the three-headed dog that was the design team for that for a while, about a year and a half. And so I learned a lot from him, but I kind of understood these principles already, but it became more clarified to me that what you want to do is write less code, debug the hell out of it, and find ways that fixed set of system rules intersects with other things and creates depth. And a lot of games don't have that. Instead, it's, oh, this would look cool here if we did it this way. And that would be cool if we did it like that. And I'm going to steal this system from this other game and just jam it all in the same box. It doesn't always work. A lot of times, even immersive sims don't always work. For example, one of the things that one of these videos actually pulls up the inventory screen, and it shows the weight of all the items that you're carrying. And the weight is critical for you making decisions as a player. In Mooncast, the way that I need this to work is that You as a player, if you know you can go build plate mail out of the heaviest thing on the planet and be impervious, then that's the right answer every time, right? You're never going to take damage because you're wearing the best armor in the game. That is not a good game design. In Mooncast, when you build really heavy, really impenetrable armor, it's heavy. You can't move as fast. You run slow. You can't even attack as quickly. So it hurts you if the wrong kind of monster comes along, you're dead. You have to make decisions about what kind of a character am I? What kind of role do I have in this party? Am I the tank? I'm going to take all the damage and just draw all the aggro. Okay, fine. I need that kind of gear. If we have 6 guys like that, we're dead. That is the wrong answer sometimes. That's the important design distinction, is that you need to have the wrong answer sometimes, but the right answer other times. And you find the group of people that makes it so that each aspect of how you guys play is filling a void in your team, right? And that's critical. Like that's how good games are designed, I think. And if you look at games that are really popular, FPSs, team-based FPSs have roles for people, and you need to give them really good consideration about how those gaps are filled by different characters. And if you're lousy at playing those games, you all play the same character and then you get slaughtered, right? This is a very flexible kind of game. You get to create your own roles. And I think that it's hopefully a reflection of how you want to play. And you find guys who complement you. And we have to create the systems to make that possible.
Yeah, I really liked System Shock. I played the first one. I haven't played the ones after that. And it's actually one of the few games that scared the crap out of me in a couple of spots. I like the way that was going. System Shock was a very early version of, I think, what we're seeing even here, with the kind of System Shock felt like it was a little bit on rails, though.
It was a storytelling game, even though there's a lot of, like, you had a lot of flexibility in there. It was still, they were telling a story.
So this guy has a sword right there. Well, what if he dies fighting somebody? Can somebody take that sword from him?
How death works is still undecided in the sense that we have implemented player death as of like last week. But what happens when you die is kind of one of those defining characteristics of what makes your game your game. I feel like we're going to dance back and forth about what happens when you die. Like, it depends on how the combat's structured, right? So one of the things that we won't have for a while is monsters, only because building monsters is incredibly expensive. It's incredibly time consuming. And look at all the extra game that needs to be built first, right? There's a ton of game you can build without a monster. There's tons of cozy games out there. They never build a monster. So if we can get as close as we can to the game that we want without building all of that, the closest we can get to really having combat is going to be PvP. I'm not shy about having PvP. That's fine. But it needs to be in a situation where it's not everywhere, because this is a building game. You craft, you create, you build. You need to have a place where you can do that kind of safely. And there will have to be a place where you can do combat. So what we're thinking right now is, when you go to the place to do combat in the far future, when we have monsters, you're going there for the monsters. You're probably not going for the players. But in the interim, you're going to find players there, right? And players are going to be able to fight each other even in the far future whenever there's monsters. So what we want is it to be absolutely chaos. And when you go there, you're going there with the expectation of getting your ass handed to you. And that's fine. I want you to go in there knowing that this is going to happen. And here's why. If you want, you can pay to have a private instance. So that's one of the ways that we get paid, is we spin up an instance zone just for you and your party, and you can go do whatever you want to do. It's great. If you don't, you can go in, free to play with the rest of the guys, and maybe you're good at PvP, maybe you're not. But every time that someone goes in as a party, it's a party-based game. Whenever you go in as a party, we spawn a bunch of monsters, and the players that are already there and all the monsters that are already there have new monsters and new players. So then it just gets more and more out of control. I think that's going to be hysterical and fun. And what happens in that space, it might be you drop an item. It might be you drop some coins. It might be you lose some mastery or some levels of experience, but you keep all your gear. I just don't know how punishing we want that to be, because the chaos is already present, right? So
well, there's it sounds like you actually have an ability to offer all those things, and especially if you're going to offer an ability to have a private instance. And I want to get into server structure in a little bit, but if you have an ability to have private instance, it would seem to reason that you could also customize your experience to say, okay, I want to play the hard level. The hard level, big rewards, big losses. Okay, I want the easy level. I just want to craft stuff and I want to try out the sword, see how it works, and you don't really lose much. You drop some coins or something if you lose a battle. But I can see some levels in there, maybe even on the fly. It's like when you go into this town, this is a hard town. Don't go in that town if, you know.
Yeah, I could see that. I hadn't thought too much about it, but I mean, that's the reason why I love working with the community. Like, there's going to be a lot of great ideas. They're not all going to come from me. I mean, that's the best thing about having a lot of player feedback early on is, you know, if players want something and we can give it to them, unless there's a really good reason not to, I don't see why not.
PvP have to be in the game. That's as you mentioned it already, that chaos have to be there because we love that. We as a player, we love that.
How you guys actually going to make money with this? And two is the server structure. When you mention private instance, it's like, oh, okay, that's a way to make money. Is that an instance that you guys already own? Is there a way that I can take part in? Like, can I use my own machine for a private or for an instance or something?
It's possible. So the hard part for us right now is that the way that the game has to work is that the head of the server cluster is, we're going to have different ones in different parts of the world, right? So the one in North America, we may have one on East Coast, West Coast, whatever. You'll connect to the one, and that'll be the one that you're talking to. And that allows us to divide down. If we have millions of players, gosh, I hope so. We're going to need lots of clusters, and that's fine. All the nodes, this took me all of 2 weeks to build, which that's saying something. That's a lot of my time. It took me 2 weeks to convert all of our existing code base to use zones that are running inside of effectively a blank node. And the blank node can be run on any number of machines, and they call into all the clusters, and the clusters are like, oh, okay, I know there's 3,000 available nodes right now. Great. Whenever somebody asks for a private instance, it finds the one with the lowest ping time, and it basically communicates to that node and says, I want you. You're going to be this person's private instance. And now everyone else is connecting to that. So, and it maintains both connections, like to the cluster and also to the zone. So you can send messages to both. We have that working already. That's working right now. So the way that works is it's fine, but that means that the software that is this blank node that is running in thousands of machines out there has to not be tampered with. And that's the problem. Security is the reason why most games don't do this. So if a person can award themselves all of the loot that's supposed to be in that zone, they'll find a way to do that because there's a financial interest in doing so. So some hacker out there is going to dismantle the server code and then figure out the one place he needs to change one line of code, and now he gets all the goodies, right? So he logs in, boom, got it all, cool, I'm leaving. And he'll do that all day long and empty out every zone he can get to. So could you run it? Technically, yes. Would we want you to? Probably not. Except there's another project that I'm very interested in, and I'm already investing in. They're one of the first investors actually in one of their devices called the Deep Network, and they have it's a box that is highly secure, and you don't, as the person who physically runs it, you don't have access to it at all. Like it's a sealed box as far as you're concerned, and because of that, it can grab code from the internet and run it. And that can be our signed server code that we can verify that it hasn't been modified. So that is a situation where I would trust the results. I would trust that people are not hacking into it and getting access to it. So for me as a developer, I love those kinds of projects. I'm expecting the box any day now. I'm going to be one of the first people trying it out, and I'll decide if it's actually something that we can use. We could run all these nodes and we could license them out to other people and have them basically like reward share, something like that. So I don't know that we're going to do that yet. I think it would be great if we could, but this is kind of down the road. We have the code set up so it could work like nodes, where the game is actually running in some remote container. And whether it's running on a deep device or it's running on AWS or the cheapest server farm I can find in wherever, doesn't change the fact that it works the same way for us. And the only difference is whether or not we're paying the server farm or we're paying the people who are running it. There's different accounting for it, but I still love the idea. It's like, run it, distribute it as much as possible, because I don't think Jeff Bezos needs any more rockets.
In your future plans, is this game supposed to be only in PC platform? Any other platforms that you would like to launch this game?
I would love to put this on PlayStation. And reason for it is that you may or may not know, Sony actually bought a blockchain company called, I don't remember what it was before, but now it's called Sonium. And I reached out to their manager in Singapore, I think is where they are, just to ask him, like, how do I get onto this blockchain? Can I work with your team? Can I get a part of this? And, I haven't made good inroads yet, but I worked at Sony for a number of years. I was one of their core engineers working on the ICE team for the PlayStation 3 when it was a big box of wires. And I know all the guys in like PlayStation of America, and I've met half the guys, Ken Kutaragi and all these other guys that are like way up in Sony. So if I can't make a phone call and get to be a part of this, I'd be very disappointed.
Is it this?
Yes, it is. So I'm excited about these kinds of developments, because when you start seeing platforms that are starting to offer the ability for you to bring projects to their technology, that's a win-win, right? They're bringing developers in, and they've got a technology platform that they want people to use. Well, they also have money. That's something we need in the short term, at least. So would I like to be on console? Heck yeah. I'd love to be on Xbox. I'd love to be on PlayStation. I'd love to be on PC. Getting onto Steam is, I don't think, very hard, but it means we have to kind of disable some of the features because Steam is very blockchain unfriendly. And I don't want to blame them for it. That's the United States regulations that makes Steam unable to do some of the blockchain things that other people can just do because we take the responsibility of doing it right. Because they're a platform, they have to make sure that all of the developers do it right, and they don't have the bandwidth to do that. So it's not really their fault, but this is the world we live in, right?
I'm thinking of something similar to a Quake server. Do you envision anything like that? Because I want to be able, with any kind of MMO game where I would be able to participate in some way. I miss the days of spinning up a Quake server and then downloading the levels that I want and then customizing things. Do you think that you might eventually get there?
I think you could, but so the thing that would be, it would effectively be a hard fork of the project. Mainly because you would either have to have no blockchain connectivity whatsoever, which is fine. Like if you just love the game and you want to play it, you can't do any contract work at all. Like it wouldn't be able to approve any of the mints. It wouldn't be able to transfer things back and forth because that's a private key that once it got out, right, anyone can do that. So that's kind of a problem. And we can't trust, again, like I can't trust that what's running on your machine is going to actually abide by the same rules that we originally set. So it's not no, but the hard part is like, is that really the same game? Is that still fun? Is that an enjoyable experience for you if all that stuff is turned off? I hope so. I hope that that's the case. And if that's the case, then an open source version that you can play all day long that doesn't have any blockchain connections, fine. Yeah, ideally, we still get paid somehow. But I mean, 5 years down the road, if the company shuts down and the game is no longer, it's no longer functioning or whatever, and there's still an active player base, but we can't afford servers, we can rip that out, or we can let you just deploy your own contract and run your whole separate hard fork that is your own version of it. That if people want to come and play on your server, then they download your client and it has all the same hooks that our game would have.
Well, actually something that I'm hoping with a Web3 game that if you have it to where people can run instances on this box that you're talking about, the deep network or something like that, it would be great if for some reason the game stopped being developed, we could still run the game using the blockchain that it was designed for. In that case, the game would never die. And of course, I'm thinking you could, there's ways that you could make it so people could fork the game after you left. One of the things I've liked the most about the concept of a Web3 game is that the company can go away, but the game will still survive.
Yeah, that's a harder thing to do than it sounds. Not because it's not usually running on the blockchain. Usually it's running outside of the blockchain and it just talks to the blockchain. The handful of games like what was it, CryptoKitties and some of the early ones that were all written inside of a contract. That's cool, but it's also frightening that you could have a bug in it and it's without proxy contracts, it gets really messy. I think that it's a possibility. Like if the game is no longer being developed and the company no longer cares to continue work on it, why not release it?
To me, the blockchain is a well, not free, but it's a accessible storage medium for various things. And again, I would really hate to buy an NFT for a game, play it in this game, and then 5 years from now, you guys go away and I'm stuck with this NFT that I can't do anything with.
Yeah, I wish I had a solution for that. That's the hardest thing to think about is how do you take the value that's in your code and your project and then give it away? I think in Mooncast's case, we've built some really great stuff. I think that there's value there, even if the game goes away. Yeah, I mean, the community is really the source of all of this. So yeah, I could be persuaded to do something different than what a normal company would do, which is fire sale the company to some other company, and then they use your tech and get the whole thing and whatever.
Well, if I were to buy a toaster right now or a car, and the company goes out of business, let's just say I buy a DeLorean, the car works despite the company being there, and that's the promise of Web3. Without without the promise of a decentralized setup, why have Web3?
Yeah, the decentralized and distributed aren't the same thing. That's the challenge. Is if the whole game were trusted, like if I could trust the output was run on, like the way that Ethereum works is the virtual machine runs on 3,000, 5,000 machines or whatever, and all of those thousands of machines come up with the same answers, and that's that trust model. Games don't usually do that because the latency is too high. So you wouldn't actually have 2 or 3 different servers running exactly the same code that are going to agree with each other. Like, I hit you with this sword and therefore I did 14 points of damage. If that were the case, I could trust it, or at least, up to a 51% chance of, people overtaking the network and whatnot. But because of that, it's hard to trust the output, and therefore it's hard to give people NFTs or value without more trust. And because it's not a trustless, and it's not really a fully trustless environment, because games need higher feedback. That feedback loop has to be very low latency. So I don't know. It's structurally doesn't fit the same model as like a standard Web3 dApp. But man, I wish we could solve for that. I worked on that for a solid year, trying to figure out like, how do we make this so that we can trust whoever's running this code to actually run well. I didn't get very far.
VR function is going to be available in this game or not?
I don't want to say yes. I don't want to say no. I'm waiting for someone to come out with VR that is accessible enough that it's worth doing. I think that the tech is getting close. I think AR is so much closer though. Like VR is great, but I think that Meta and their glasses and some of these other high-tech glasses that are coming out are great. I just don't know how that would fit in with Mooncast. So, I mean, VR is a better match for the experience, but
right.
I don't know that it's a big enough market to do that. I think it would be cool. I just don't know.
It will be super cool to have the VR function in there in this game, especially in these type of games, because you can have a better experience of the game actually. So that would
I want to say that VR is probably better in first person too. Like we're not quite first person. We're more like a third person, first person game right now. The camera's going to change. That's all temporary. We do want to see our character in front of us so that we can actually enjoy the way that you've built your guy up. So, but exactly how that works, I don't know. The hard part for me is like, if we're trying to build this big MMO experience and we're trying to really build it big, we need a lot of people to just build the MMO part. If we're going to do the VR part, that would have to almost be like an adjacent product that connects to it. And honestly, I think fishing would be one of those places where it would make sense. Like you could feel like you're really there, but it would require like, we need a bigger team for that. Or maybe that's the only thing we do. Maybe we just do VR fishing and screw everything else, right?
Well, since you mentioned this, I'll ask you, what is this here? Because this reminds me of fishing.
This is Angel is working really hard to build in an analog fishing experience. And by analog, I mean to say there is a lot of freedom that the player has to fish well or fish poorly, and it's in their hands, quite literally. It's the controller, and what you see is there's a cast, and the cast will go far or go short, and it's up to when you release. And as you're pulling, you can see his mouse is kind of pulling against the fish that's actually in the water. And as he's moving his mouse around, he's pulling against it. And there's physics calculations on how much tension is on the line, and it'll eventually bend the fishing pole and everything. So it's trying to figure out, does this line snap, or does it actually start allowing you to reel in this fish? And you can see this is all very debuggy. It's programmer art, and it's all in a prototype. But getting this kind of level of fidelity is something that we want, because we want you to feel like, similarly with having the world's most powerful armor, we don't want you to have the world's most powerful fishing pole and always win. That's not the kind of game we're making. Instead, we want you to thoughtfully select the right kind of fishing pole and bait, and then go find the fish that you want. And by seeing the fish in the water, how it behaves, you can decide, oh, do I want to let this one go, or do I want to pull it in? And can I pull it in?
So this is like a mini game in Mooncast, or is this a new game altogether?
This is probably going to be the core of what we get to release in Mooncast in the next few months. It's not in Mooncast. That's a prototype that's just there for like tuning and demonstration purposes. But when this thing moves into Mooncast, it'll fit visually more, and you'll actually be able to go to any place that is shallow and cast the fishing pole.
So this is an exclusive. You haven't shown this to anybody else, have you?
Nobody has seen this. We literally filmed this morning, so no one has seen this mini game. This is a Faz #1 first breaking news for you guys.
Well, I was wondering how the fishing would work. They did show the little movie we showed earlier. Did show the guy walking up to a pier and with a fishing pole, and then you have that dialogue says "fish caught." So it looks like you have to work for getting certain fish.
Yeah, this is what'll happen between you walking up to the fish and actually getting that pop up. You'll have to actually reel the fish in.
Is everything an NFT, including the fish?
Can be, yeah. I mean, so the fish itself will be, yeah.
So I could capture fish, and I can export this into an NFT, and hopefully it won't go rotten while it's waiting to be sold.
No, but they will if they sit in your inventory long enough.
I don't want to put you on the spot too hard here. No game out there can function without players. So what is the hook? See how I did that right after the fishing thing? What's the hook that is going to make players salivate to get into your game?
I think the hook is going to be crafting. I really do. I think people are going to be so excited about the way that our crafting system works. When they start seeing all the cool things that other people make, they're going to say, I want that. And then they realize how hard that is to get. And then they're like, oh, I've got to grind a bit. Okay, maybe it's better if I just buy this resource from someone else who's already found it. And then now you're hooked. You're in it. You're now emotionally invested because you've had to come out of pocket, but it's tokens that you found in the game, right? I found a whole bunch of pine, I sold it over here so I could afford to buy the ruby that makes my mask cool. But now I have to go over here and have that guy who can make cool masks make the cool mask because I don't have the quality of crafting, right? Or maybe I want to be the guy who makes cool masks. So there's this huge crafting fantasy that I think a lot of other games, they scratch some of that itch, but not to the depth that we're going.
Well, we're not talking crafting like Ultima where you farm sheep and then you have you done that? There's a game loop where you have sheep and then you shear the sheep after they've grown enough wool. And then some people make their existence just farming sheep. And then they just sell wool all the time.
You know, if that's the game you want to play, you can probably find it in Mooncast.
Well, you know, I mean, if you're fishing, I would think that there's some rare fish out there, which, you know, you might need to craft a certain thing. It might not be required for the sword, but the guy who makes the sword might not do it for you unless he gets a certain kind of fish, you know, that his mother served him when he was a little boy and that kind of stuff.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, we're planning on having fishing tournaments and various other things that keep people excited just about the fishing part. But it's absolutely, I fully expect that there will be enough ties that there isn't one right answer. And there's a lot of things for people to explore and then realize that there's what I like to call a multidimensional optimization problem, where it's not just I'm looking for the next best thing in this curve. Instead, it's I want a thing that is more like this, but it also does that. And that creates a very complex space that now you're searching for the thing that makes you happy, not the thing that is better than what the next guy has.
Let's wait for the new crafting way.